Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dr. Cammy Goes Keto, where I'm transitioning from a standard American diet to a ketogenic, carnivore, no sugar, no flour, and no caffeine now. It's been today actually is 60 days, so 2 months. Yeah. And I'm here with the wonderful Mike Collins, the sugar-free man at sugardetox.com, who has been very instrumental in helping me get this far, which is just a miracle for me. And the fact that it's been like something like 65 days, 66 days of no binging is just an absolute miracle for me too. So thank you so much, Mike, for being here, not only for me, but for all of the other people who are listening and learning, hopefully learning a lot from the videos that we do together.
Cool. Yeah. No, I'm excited for you. This is great.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So Mike and I were talking a little bit before we started rolling the video about where I am in my journey and how I don't know, I'm grieving a little bit over the idea that I will be not handling my emotions and my feelings in the unhealthy ways with binges that I used to do in the past. And, the logical side of me says, well, yeah, that's wonderful. That's great that you're learning these new ways. But the old, the part of me, the way that's known how to basically only manage my feelings and emotions in an addictive kind of way, whether it was drugs or alcohol or shopping or sex or whatever it was. When I was 6 and 8 years old, it was penny candy in my girlfriend's tree fort till I couldn't move, barely get myself home, and my mom would yell at me for not being willing to eat my dinner completely. I'm just kind of grieving so logistically, it makes good sense that I'm doing these healthy things, but part of me is really kind of sad giving up the idea that I don't get this excitement and this energy and this joy and this, fancy, frilly, shiny metal, just these ideas that come into my head when I used to think about binging, not even the actual binge itself. As soon as I decided I was going to start binging, I would be happy, this happiness, like, yay, I'm gonna binge. I'm gonna get to taste all that food that makes me feel so good and soothes me and gives me that chemical high. And then after that, I continue to eat it because I just can't stop. And then I start to feel too full. And then I start to get this shame and guilt. And I start to, and then I wouldn't throw it up because I was so into punishing myself for, doing it, and would just make myself sit around in physical pain and, not get any relief from it, until hours and hours went by. And toward the very end, all I could really do was go into my bed and sleep because I would just be in such a coma over all of it, or
Uh,
just stay on the couch because I couldn't get off the couch for hours and hours. And, it was awful. It was awful. So, you know how in AA we kind of say when you want to eat that something or, translating it over to food, you follow it all the way to the end, right? Like
right.
you follow it all the way to the misery and all the way to the way that you were so mistreating yourself and being so awful. But, still, the reality is I'm experiencing a little bit of a blah, about it right now. And because I'm really interested in trying to do it longer than 90 days. Yeah,
Another sigh. You needed another good sigh.
I did. I need some size here today.
Well, look, I mean, I don't want to stop the emotion from coming if it's going to come. One of the things that we talked about early on when we first started this thing is that, you know, my job isn't to make you cry, but my job is to have a safe space for you to do that if it's necessary. And what we were talking about before was my dark night of the soul, which was in essence, I believe, the release of, you know, decades of childhood trauma and all kind of other stuff and when and how it happened. And I have an intuitive feeling from listening to you now and earlier before we recorded is that you may be upon that. Like, and that may be a difficult time, as a lot of people who watch the show know that you lost a couple of children, that grief is, unbelievable, and you ramped up your eating during those time periods. And this kind of knowing that there is a stuckness, kind of a Beth of Vander Colt and, the body keeps the score. There's a stuck grieving or hurt or fear or pain that's in there, and you can feel it coming, and God knows you don't wanna go back there, and no one does, but, I hate the phrase, but it's true, the only way there is through it, you have to go through it, and, decades of doing this with people and tens of thousands of detoxes, we've come to know that the real work is not necessarily the abstinence, it's not necessarily the lack or, the no sugar stuff. It is what happens after, what happens when you obtain an abstinence, like where you are with 60 days, is that you now have to deal with stuff that you tamp down emotionally with these products, these drugs, and that a lot of people. I think women are better at this. I genuinely believe this because I never would have signed up for what happened to me. It was facilitated by a divorce where I let a door open and I was allowing myself to feel bad and try to cry, which I couldn't do for months. But I think you're in a place where there's a wave coming, and you know, uh, maybe I don't know. You can tell me that you might want to. And you've built an infrastructure around you. There's a lot of people who love you, and you can pick up the phone. You got 10 or 15 or 20 on your text and on the internet, or chat or Zoom or whatever. They're there to support you, myself included. And I think what I think happened to me as the oldest child and, the responsible one and you as the doc and the leader literally of who told me right with your husband, in the family and is that, you kept a strong face and you kept a strong profile and everybody counted on you. And now it's time to just let it go and let yourself feel what you're gonna feel, whatever that is, and it's never something you're looking forward to, especially when you have had periods in your life where there's serious grief and that might be part of what's gonna come up, and it's this healing and this understanding that is the real work of any kind of substance use disorder recovery, but in this case, it's the sugar, and the flour and whatever, the legal ones, and the idea that that triad of sugar, flour, and caffeine cannot hold down emotions as well as heroin or alcohol is ridiculous because I've just seen it tens of thousands of times. The
Oh,
people
yeah.
who are afraid of their feelings because they had a crutch or they had a product that they could use that was almost free and ubiquitous. And, they didn't care that much about their body or their type 2 or whatever. They just cared that they didn't want to feel that shit right now. Like they got work, they got kids, they don't got time to break down and be a mess, which is really, I think, for folks like yourself and myself, like that was the worst sin, to be a mess, quote unquote, for a time, but while the emotions started to come. Anyway, I mean, I don't know how that all lands with you, but I think that intuitively I'm feeling it with you, like something's gonna go on, and it could be big, it could be little, it doesn't matter, as long as the process is of letting it happen. And again, I said it earlier, and I hate this damn term, but leaning into it. It's so
Oh.
to let it happen, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm feeling that way. I'm feeling like something might be brewing. Yeah, something might be coming. But when my first son passed away, 1995, I didn't get into the food a lot because he was our first son and we wanted to get pregnant. We wanted more kids. And so I'm able to like logistically just control it and say, that, what was I gonna say? Oh, say that I was able to not I wanted to get pregnant again, right? We wanted to start a family, so I was highly motivated to not gain a bunch of weight because I had just had a baby 4 weeks prior to that before he passed, and so I had weight to lose in order to get pregnant again. But
Mm.
when my second son passed away 10 years later, it was a free-for-all, and it was awful. Losing a second child for me wasn't twice as bad, it was 10 times worse. It was worse. And I'll
Mm,
never forget, there was a moment when I was packing up the house because I knew I had to move. My husband wouldn't move out of the house. And so I knew I had to sell the house and move out of the house that our children were growing up in. And so I was down packing boxes. And there was a moment I'll never forget when I was so distraught and so sad that, I can't put it into words, and there was nowhere for me to go. I remember I was just sitting on the floor next to a box
mm,
and, crying wasn't even enough, like crying as hard as I could or yelling or screaming, that wasn't enough.
mm,
Eating whatever, shooting up heroin, nothing. I never did that, thank God. But, nothing was gonna take care of that grief. And I remember that I just had to sit there and be with it. And it didn't last for very long, that intensity, because I just couldn't handle it so intensely but, for very long, but just sitting in that grief and going, there's no way out of this situation. And then realizing that I was doing the best I could, right? I filed for divorce from my cheating husband. I sold the house that I couldn't afford anymore, that he wouldn't move out of. I was buying a condo right across the street so my kids would go to the same grocery store and the same gas station and the same school. I was eventually going to get a new job because my boss was a jerk. There were all these different things that were going to happen to make the best life I could to be around. But, so compared to that, this is not going to, whatever is coming is not going to be that bad. I can almost guarantee that. But
yeah,
still, this is decades and decades and decades of holding on. And, a big trigger for me is my mother right now, thinking about how to manage that relationship because she's 95 years old now. And, she's really in a memory care facility and really failing with her brain, but her body physically is working. And she has a pacemaker too. So that just kind of zaps her heart back every time it needs to. So I don't know how long she could go on another 5 years. But having opportunities to react or say things to her when she still says things that, crush my soul because my job was to always try to please her and be accepted and loved by her. And still to this day, I'm not truly accepted for who I am.
mm,
And even if, when I lose 90 pounds, I'm still not going to be accepted for who I am. It'll be something that she'll find. And that's just who she is and who I am. But yeah, so we'll see what's coming. Something I'm just feeling really kind of down and
that's okay. I mean, that's okay. So one 2 things that come up, that like leaning in, I'm not in love with them, but they are real and they do work is, 1, the body is not gonna give you more than you can handle. That's just fact, you know? And 2, it comes in waves, and you have, as I was describing in my story before we came on, is that, you can have 80, 90% of the day fine. You're, like, functioning and happy and whatever, and then when that wave happens, when that, time period of, the whole analyst and chef stuff, the living in process, you're allowing that's exactly what living in process is, where they, they teach you to, they do it there's a lot of education, but then they call something called hit the mats, where they go to the mats and they, one person, everybody puts a hand on you and you can thrash around, do whatever. But you learn how to let it out. If it's coming and trapped, you learn how to let it out, right? And it becomes a process that you can do normally, and you don't have to stuff with sugar or flour or alcohol or drugs or sex or gambling. You don't have to do that. You don't have to have a feel good on top of the feelings to hold them down. You learn how to, in a systematic way, allow the normal function of your emotions to happen, right? And that, I think, is the gift or the work that we have, that it takes a little bit of, well, first of all, it takes some abstinence, because it's not going to start. It might start real quickly in day 4, 5, or 6, and it's kind of a mystery to people what the hell's going on. But for sure, in order to get further, if you had a decent enough, any kind of decent habit at all, or you're, truly biochemically have a trouble with the substances, past days 30 and 60, you're like you're feeling, I think now, it's a little bottled up, like something's going on. I don't know exactly what it is, because you don't have a process. Most people do not have a process to release the pressure valve, the steam coming out. You just don't have it. It's not there. You know what I mean? You've never learned it. It's not, you didn't learn holistic, happy walking and yoga and all. You didn't learn other ways to handle it. And, your go to is the sugar and the flour and the drugs and the alcohol, whatever. And now you got to, it's like learn how to walk again. You've got to learn a holistic, safe kind of not wait. It's very analogous to people pleasing, where you bottle something up for months like a boss, and then you blow up and say everything you thought for 6 months inside of a 2-minute period, and basically you lose your job. You know, it's the same thing, but it's with your emotions. You know what I mean? It's like they're trapped in the body, and they're trapped in the tissue and whatever. There's a lot of speculation on what it is, but having lived it and having helped thousands of people come through to the other side and seeing everybody's a little different, but they're basically all the same. They're all the same process of coming. One of the things I told you, the guy who was kind of my mentor a little bit in this, I told him, I said, Craig, I'm losing my mind. He said, and he was pissing me off because he was all happy and shit. He says, oh, good, you're coming to your senses. It's like, yeah, it's like, yeah, maybe you are losing your mind a little bit. And that's what it feels like. It feels like you're losing your mind because you can't process something you've never processed before. You're processing something you've always stuffed down. You change the feeling with some substance or process or whatever. So yeah, it's an awakening. And if you look at it like that, as an awakening, I think you even mentioned that, like if you look at it as an awakening of the real you and the coming back to the homeostasis that is someone who, like, I'm not really a fan of the analogies to the wild, where a giraffe will watch its baby get eaten by a lion. It will go down, it will shake and shudder, and the other giraffes will get around it and support it, and it'll go on for a minute, 5, 10, 15, it doesn't matter. Then they get up and they're done because they have experienced the grief and the processing in a process, in a way that's intuitive to them. Again, I'm not a fan. I don't know if there's analogies in the human, but I think it is. I think there is kind of a learning, and that's what Ann Wilson Schaff did. I think was her genius, is to have invented a way to help people long before Gabor Mate, long before Bether van der Kolk, discovered that this is a real thing.
Well, and I have her book, and I started reading it, and I only got like about 20 pages in, but it's so fascinating. And I didn't realize that it's a book that's going to give solution, that's going to show you, it shows you how to be different.
Yeah.
Like I think the timing is really good for me. I need to spend some more time in that book. So yeah, I'm a little nervous about what might be coming down the pipeline, and part of me is still like, well, I only made the commitment for 90 days,
Oh,
and at
let's get over that.
91
Let's make
days,
it
I'm
for
gonna
another
drink a cup of coffee.
Let's make it for another 90. You know what I mean? It's like, intellectually you want this to be a lifestyle, and you want to fall to the time when you were a diving champion and a you know, Miss San Diego stuff. That's what you want in your heart. And I shouldn't say that as a coach, but I know it's true. You know what I mean? And it's true. And so, how do we get there, kind of thing?
Well, how do we get there without going through all that stuff that's coming?
That's the question every alcoholic and every no alcoholic comes to me and wants to quit drinking. They just want to teach him how to drink normally. And the same,
Yeah.
they don't want abstinence. They don't want, and my thing is to pull it back 40,000 feet and say, we were not supposed to ingest this shit. That's not, like, our genes
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
mismatched for our environment. And we have these things that, a kid can access that will actually create the stuff we're talking about as far as the tamping the emotions down, right? And it's like, to be not of this society, which 95.89% are doing this unconsciously, anesthetizing themselves. They don't think themselves,
Yeah.
let me eat my way out of this divorce. They say, oh, wouldn't a chocolate bar be nice? Because my husband just filed for divorce. It's not like there's not a connection there yet. And our work is to make that connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's super interesting. I mean, I find it fascinating, but, a lot of people kinda weigh it by the feeling that they don't even have yet. Like, they know something's a brewing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm willing to go through it, I guess I have to. I mean, what else am I gonna do, Because when I'm making choices about what I'm gonna eat or not eat, then it's like, okay, well, if I eat this, I'll stay heavy and I won't get to have my emotional freedom and, my emotional health.
Yes.
And if I don't eat it, then, I'll get thinner and healthier and I'll be able to work through my emotional stuff. I mean, and that's what I'm up to, right? That's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to do the work, but sometimes I just don't want to.
Yeah. Well, let's just reframe this a little bit. So you just said something real important. So, like, if you maybe switch this task, this process, this goal, this next year or so to becoming healthy emotionally as opposed to losing weight or whatever, and that's a reasonable goal. I mean, that's a good goal to come back to a healthy emotional life. Because intellectually, you and a lot of people listening understand that sugar is, like I keep talking about the emotional eating folks and the eating disorder folks, like they got 70% of the equation right, but they don't have the rest of it right. Like they think you can moderate. So you've got a lot of the intellectual power understanding of what's going on. Now you have to lean into the visceral power of that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that a lot of the people that work with us is in my heart, I believe you to be, as I think I am, and a lot of the people we work with, a very intuitive person, a very sensing person who intuitively knows things. But I always think of drug addiction, sugar addiction, as the tuning fork to the universe or other people in the room or whatever way your intuition manifests. I see it as it's got the tuning fork out of tune, right? And if you
Oh,
look at the work as to get that tuning fork for you personally first, obviously, but then the message is whether your belief is prayer, Jesus, meditation, whatever, I just believe that your connection to the universe, your connection to whatever your spiritual faith beliefs are, is off. It's been knocked out of tune by this stuff. So if we shift the thing to weight loss and binging and just to recapturing or, perfecting your intuitive nature, and that's intuitive for your own health and change and process. And then, when you can kind of feel what's going on with other people. I don't know.
wow.
There's a I think there's a lot to becoming emotionally healthy that most people intellectually don't hold a lot of weight until they actually are in it and then not past it, but because I think that process is the most fascinating or one of the most fascinating things that a human can do is to learn that type of emotional understanding of themselves, their family, their relationships like that. And sadly, no fault of anyone's, culturally, from the slaves and sugar and flour forward and alcohol and caffeine forward, we have covered that up. And now it's very clear with Bether Vanderkolk, very clear with Bruce Perry and Gabor Mate and Amy, whatever her name is, a piggy, and they're that these substances can alter your ability to deal with trauma, to even deal with joy. So yeah, I
Uh-huh.
mean, it's a real maybe a little bit of a shift in the goal or something, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Well, and looking forward to that awakening, right? Like, cause going without, like I'm off all mind altering chemicals. I
Right,
mean, I'm off everything. Well, I'm on an antidepressant and, which I don't want to go mess with right now.
right.
But, I mean, all of the other things that I was addicted to and that I used, I'm off. And so here comes like there's an awakening, right? And like I'm slow to get things done, and I'm really strong. I'm really resilient and I'm really strong. And so it kind of like I'm fighting it, and I can fight it for months probably, but I'm so glad we're doing this video and having this discussion because the more willing I become to opening up, to what's possible in my emotional healing, the quicker it might be able to happen and then I'm done with it.
Well, that's everybody's goal, but, you gotta let it happens when it happens. So
I
this is the
know.
first I'm hearing about the antidepressant, so I have to make a huge ass disclaimer to anyone listening to this and to you is, like, I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on the internet, and I can't, like, subscribe or prescribe or unprescribe these types of things. But one person and one book that people that I would read, and I think in our goal to recapture your emotional what's the right word? Clarity, but more it's,
Like
you
an
know,
equilibrium.
equilibrium, holistic, yes, equilibrium. You might wanna read her first book. She's kinda a little wild lately, but it's a long story, but her name is Dr. Kelly Brogan, practicing psychotherapist in New York and bought into the whole pill and stuff, and really the theory not even the theory, the work that we are describing here is very well described in her book, her first book, Coming to Yourself or something. There's 2 books that both of them have this subject matter. And it really is about, okay, why the hell did you sign up for these antidepressants, first of all? And what was going on in your life? Okay. And she described exactly what I just described. I probably got a lot of it from her. Is like, okay, you were getting a divorce or you were whatever. You have to now like deal with that and without that stuff, right? And it's really both books are about that coming back to your own emotional stability. And stability is not the right word. Clarity or equilibrium, I think, are better words. Yes. But yeah, I mean, it's really all about that. It's about that kind of, and it's all about getting off of psychotropic meds. It's all about getting off because I am betting that what's holding your emotional grieving back is that drug.
Oh,
You know,
you
that,
think so?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And if you read Kelly, you'll know. You know, plus if you ever meet her, tell her I'm in love with it. But no, that's not true. Anyway, what I'm getting at here is like she describes what I just described, except not just substitute SSRIs and such with sugar. She describes the exact same process.
So the SSRI could be blunting my
Correct.
natural
That
response,
could be, in my view, my worldview, is
but
blunt.
it's increasing serotonin levels.
That's bullshit. Total bullshit.
Well, it's a reuptake inhibitor on a biochemical
Yeah, you
process.
do not
It
have
blocks the
you do
receptors
not
and
SRI deficiency. You have an stunted, I've said this 100 times, but it's a very common construct in the world of alcohol and drugs. If you started using alcohol and drugs, you stop growing emotionally, right? It's common knowledge, right? In treatment centers and therapy and whatever. The problem is no one ever brings that knowing into the sugar addiction world or the eating disorder world. Some do, and I take that back, but some do. But yeah, I mean, it's like this is an emotional dopamine serotonin dysregulation problem, and trying to manipulate it is a fool's errand. It's an impossible game. Cannot do, like maybe 100 or 200 years from now when we have the diagnostic tools, we'll be able to do that and you'll be able to take this or this ayahuasca or whatever. But right now we're the guinea pigs. We're the guinea pigs.
yeah, that's true.
And the horror stories of getting off of that crap are insane.
Right.
Horror stories.
Which is why I don't want to get off of it now because, I could see myself. I mean, my goal is to be off of all of my medications, but I don't think it's a good idea to do it now just because I'm such a fledgling and learning about a life without food, for
Yeah.
comfort. I mean, maybe after a year or even 6 months or something. I don't know, but that would be a discussion for me to have with my therapist, Michelle. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm still feeling like things are coming alive.
It's not my job, but I have had one of the things that happens, and maybe you're experiencing this, is they become too much. I've had this with a lot of clients. It becomes they're too powerful. They're the right dose when you're using sugar and flour, but when you get off of sugar and flour, they seem too powerful. They seem too much.
I see.
A little shaky and different weird stuff happens, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, so you have to look into that too. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do wanna stress, and I have no affiliation with Kelly, but I just have read both of her first books, and again, the description of coming back to your own emotional equilibrium is the goal of her getting off the SSRIs, and she's deep enough to understand what we talked about, which is that you're still gonna have to all you're doing is stopping the process through dealing with whatever's going on, or, whatever's held down. So she's, real good about that.
Well, good. This has all been a lot of good, interesting food for thought, so to speak.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens in the next few videos. I mean, and, as I start to be more, aware of emotional awakening.
Let's call it this period of time, your emotional 20 well, let's do it before then because we're recording December, but, the emotional awakening of Cammy. You should probably change the name of the podcast because keto stuff might be throwing people off. Anyway, you understand what I'm saying? Is like
Yeah, yeah,
I've been trying for a decade to make people understand that the conversation that you and I just had is the work. Period.
yeah,
Story.
yeah. Well, but that doesn't tend, this conversation doesn't come up unless you do get off of the
Yes, correct.
substances. And that's a tricky part at the beginning, right?
That's
At
step
the
one.
step 1, and it took me a long time. I mean, I messed around with the caffeine for 8 months, and I
Right.
tried for over 2 years to get off of to quit binging. Over 2 years, and I'm getting help right now too with the GLP-1 with Zepbound, so I'm not even doing it by myself, and my goal is gonna be to get off of that after I wanna quit binging for somewhere around 4 to 6 months and then start tapering off of that. That'll be another whole interesting transition too.
Well, another thing, I mean, we mentioned it on another podcast, but your gift to the world could literally be like a bariatric surgery or whatever. That this is the jumping off. This is the little like a Suboxone, the crutch to get you through this. But with all of the now coming out reports that ones are stopping people from drink, they're doing it to lose weight, but then they stop drinking, they stop gambling. That it silences noises that in your head about food and everything. There is some psychoactive or some brain something's going on in the brain with that drug. We have to again, we're the guinea pigs, like 50 or 100 years from now, we may understand that we might need to microdose it, whatever. We'll understand a better interaction because we'll have the diagnostic tools. But right now, I would almost apply the same thing, the caveat that I did with the SSRI with that drug, because there's something going on in the brain too. Forget about all the muscle mass and the frozen stomach, all that stuff. That's given. The interesting part of GLP is the reports coming out that it quiets the noise, it has people stop drinking and doing other addictive behaviors because I think it's a powerful emotions inhibitor personally, So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. And again, your gift to the world could be as you move through this process of abstinence, 5 or 6 months, no binging, no that, then assess one or both of the other two things.
Yeah.
I call it stepping down. Keep stepping down
Yeah.
to you, to just you and
Yeah.
your processes for dealing with life and stuff.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for coming along for the ride, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jan.
Mike.
Thank
Take good
you.
care. We'll
Yeah.
see you next time.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.